Welcome everybody to the Monday Night Tours. We are your guides on this magical journey that takes us through the Monday Night Wars. I am your host, Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Oakland.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure always to be here to talk about clearly the golden age of fucking wrestling. I didn't know that these first couple of, we were having a good time, and I don't mean to, obviously we'll talk more about this later, but this has been some rough wrestling to watch these past couple of weeks. Yes,
it really has. Of course, today we're going to be discussing the December 11th, 1995 editions of Nitro and Raw. And like you said, Kyle, when we started this journey back in September, here we are 15 episodes in, you kind of get off. You got that Lex Luger showing up at the Mall of America with Nitro. And, things are kind of picking up. You got the Giant, and Hogan, and there's a big feud with the Dungeon of Doom. And there's a little bit of cheesiness in there, but for the most part, for 95, I thought, okay, we got a little bit. On the other side, you got Shawn Michaels, you got Bret Hart, so there's a lot going on there. But man, has it been bad lately, and it's really making me hope for the day that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash come as the outsiders to WCW and really turn the table from what has been some garbage product.
Well, unfortunately, I think we still have got about at least 12 more episodes before that happens.
It's at least, I think it's May when they show up. So we've got a little bit of time, to say the least. We're probably another 20 or 25 before we're really starting to get into anything worthwhile. That said, Kyle, let's get into Nitro. Nitro's been live from Miami, Chicago, Phoenix. We've seen all those skylines, and tonight, Charlotte is no different, Kyle. So here we are, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Sorry, Johnson City, Tennessee, you did not make the cut there. Or
Huntsville, Alabama, Macon, Georgia, some place in Tennessee. I can't remember the name of the place. But yeah, we can definitely tell that Nitro pulls out the red carpet for any city that has a sports team.
Pretty much. Of course, we go to the commentary booth, Kyle, and Mongo and Pepe are rocking some leather biker jackets sort of look. And
Speaking of going downhill, this is all good. So is this.
And why are they doing that? Because we got some nasty boys showing up tonight, Kyle. But not the nasty boys, which kind of disappointed me. And Mongo, I'll hold you responsible yet again for lying to me and getting my hopes up. Of course, the big discussion, Kyle, we've got our main event tonight. You've got Flair and Arn Anderson versus Sting and Hogan, but can Sting and Hogan trust each other? It's a question we ask on a weekly basis, and it's a question that gets answered on a weekly basis, but yet again, we're going to ask it again.
Yeah. It's going to get re-asked, yes.
In case you haven't...
And weirdly enough, Heenan thinks that no, they can't trust each other, which that totally shocks me that Heenan would actually think that Hogan and Sting can't be trusted.
Hey, if there's one person Heenan will never trust, it is the immortal Hulk Hogan. And as they discuss this more, Kyle, of course, the bell rings and there's a match going on inside the ring, which is funny. I don't know if you noticed or not. I did see that, like, when they were showing pyros and stuff going off, for the pan shot of the arena, I saw a bunch of people in the ring, and I'm like, is there already a match? But then they go to the commentary booth, so I was like, maybe not.
I thought I saw a masked guy, but I couldn't make heads or tails about who it was. And then we go in, and it's like, it's Mr. JL taking on Eddie Guerrero.
So that's our opening bout, Kyle. It's typical. We got our our cruiserweights in the early high flying match, and the commentary team opens up with this, Kyle, mentioning that Eddie Guerrero is going to be one of the contestants or superstars, I should say, in this WCW versus New Japan sort of tournament, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it, but basically it's like a best-of-7 series, I think, where they're going to have...
I think what it is it's a maximum of 7 matches, which obviously I would assume it's going to be tied 3-3.
Right.
And then they're going to have the rubber match.
So you'll have 7 WCW superstars versus 7 New Japan, and Eddie Guerrero, one of those, which, I guess makes a lot of sense. He's got to push. He's a good candidate for this matchup. Heenan, of course, continues to talk about how the Japanese will not be jet lagged. They are practicing in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee as we speak. So, don't sleep on the Japanese in this upcoming tournament at Starrcade. And in case you were wondering, Kyle, Mr. JL, they discussed what the JL stands for. Just lucky was the appropriate response. And I thought that was a little weak from Heenan. I expected that from Mongo. I thought Heenan would have something a little more clever than just lucky. For me, Cal, there's not a whole lot I want to say about this match. For the two of them, it was kind of a little sloppy, and I don't know if that's Mr. JL's end of it, or if it was just bad chemistry, or what the case was. Ultimately, I got two spots I want to discuss. One is, I don't know if you noticed, Eddie Guerrero sitting at the top rope, and JL kind of like comes running and bouncing off the side ropes to kick him. And he kind of kicks him to the outside, so Guerrero like exaggerates the fall and hits the guardrail on the outside. There's an old woman in the front row. I don't know, she got hurt and scared at the same time, and that was the highlight of the match for me.
What, an old lady getting injured?
Yes. Pretty much.
You heartless bastard.
It wasn't that exciting of a match, and eventually they kind of do a cradle roll-up and then reverse it, and then it looks like Mr. JL's supposed to get it reversed again, but it almost looks like he just flips into it.
I've seen it done a couple of times. It's pretty standard. What it's supposed to look like is Eddie grabs the shoulders and tucks them under, which then makes it look like JL kind of flips back on his shoulders.
But I think it was a botched spot there.
It might be, but I've seen it done before. It never looks natural.
Okay, well, it didn't look natural here, and that's how Eddie does win the match. This is a star and 3/4 for me, Kyle, and I think they could have got a lot better out of each other, and they really didn't. So I don't know. What do you think?
I was actually nice about it. I think it has to do with the fact that with all the matches that we've been watching these past couple of days, I feel like somebody deserved a bone being thrown at, so I threw it at this match. I actually gave it 2.5 stars. I said I might be nice on this one because, I agree there were some sloppy spots, and the match did get a little dull. Eddie, the one thing I had to give it some extra points is that Eddie really has been getting some nice pop from the crowd. And right now, I think WCW is doing a very good job in grooming a good star, which is something
getting one of the best pushes easily on Nitro, anyways.
Well, and the thing is that a lot of people, kind of would, criticize WCW with, you guys didn't have to create any talent. WWF created the talent, and then you just bought it. Well, Guerrero right now is being groomed as being an honest-to-God good talent on the card for the company. So for that, I have to give them a little bit of credit. I only have one other thing I wanted to add. I know I have a couple of notes, but I don't want to go too long on here. One, they cannot, talk more about or less about this triangle match. I think the triangle match is going to be talked about in every single match.
This is like the Giant versus Hogan at Halloween Havoc. They promote one major angle for the pay-per-view, and the rest are pretty much afterthoughts. This time, at least, we know there are going to be some other matches because of this New Japan thing, but otherwise we wouldn't even know what the rest of the card is.
Right, and we're slowly but surely starting to figure out who's actually in the matches. I think you said Eddie Guerrero, we know for sure is in it. And the only thing I want to say is, Randy Anderson, you're already on thin ice with me again this week. The one thing I can't stand is when in a professional wrestling setup is when the refs are being nonchalant. And you have a very particular job that I don't think is that difficult. So at least look like you're doing it as best you can. When people easily kick out of a pin at 1, but you still count to 2. I feel like lazy refs will always count to 2 by default, and it drives me up a wall because this happens so many times in this match where JL just immediately kicks out after 1, but even after the shoulders are up, and here's Randy Anderson still putting the hand down. It's a small thing. It's just a pet peeve of mine that I'll have to deal with, but it's still something I had to point out. Randy
Anderson, you are on thin ice with Mr. Hoagland over here, so
you're a marked man, sir.
You are a marked man. After the match, Kyle, we get Mean Gene, and he's calling out Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart. Mean Gene is not a fan of Jimmy Hart ever since the turn on Hogan, and he basically asks him who dressed you, Jimmy Hart? Was it Spike Lee or Spike Jones? So
90s.
Gene spitting fire here. He does say that Lex Luger, meanwhile, looks awesome. And basically, it's not much of a promo here, Kyle. Lex basically says Sting and Hogan helped prevent Macho Man from having both a broken arm and losing that world title last week. He, of course, talks about Flair in that upcoming triangle match and basically thinks it's going to come down to him and the Stinger and says, may the best man win. Ultimately, not much from this promo. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that or not.
Not really, other than Luger is horrible live, and it's a shame that usually when you have a good manager, somebody who's got some charisma,
you got a nice
like
mouthpiece there, right? Yeah,
you use that. Like, I don't understand. Probably Lex has probably done most of his career being solo, so he knows how to do his own promos. But the only thing he really knows how to do is state the obvious and then flex. He doesn't really know how to do anything else.
Yeah, he's so much better when he had, he has Hart, or when he had Bobby Heenan, as his manager for a period of time. Like, he needs that mouthpiece for sure. After that, though, Kyle, we get our Starrcade promo. This is another one of the, mysteries of the Orient. And in the commercial, they kind of show a bunch of clips of wrestlers. And I think you even called out that Lex, Sting, Macho Man, and Eddie Guerrero, Alex Wright are all in it. But then it's, you start to think, well, Sting, Macho Man, Lex are already in matches. So, of course, WCW wouldn't, put them in multiple matches on a pay-per-view, right?
Well, I mean, once again, not to go forward in this, not to go into the future, but as I was watching them, these are my thoughts that kind of popped up. Like, I think they're just putting them in. I thought, at least the time, they're just putting them in this because obviously they are on the card. They're part of the triangle match minus Flair,
right?
Although, except for Macho has to defend the title. So it's like, why would Macho Man have to wrestle and then wrestle again to defend his title? I feel like all that just sounds like just stupid and, once again, booking. And then I started thinking to myself, like, the booking is so weird right now that I actually wouldn't be shocked. And at the same time, these are your big hitters. So if you really do want to show off the best of the best in the World Cup, then I guess you do put in Sting, Macho, and Lex. So I don't know. And then I also had to end the thing with, what the hell is Hogan doing? Hogan is not. This is the first card where Hogan is not being showcased at all. And then why are there two R's in Starrcade?
I could actually answer both of those for you.
Sure.
The first one about Hogan, Hogan has that weird contract where he basically only has X amount of matches, dates, bookings, pay-per-views, the whole ordeal, and they mismanaged it, and he basically is contractually not obligated to participate at the last pay-per-view of the year. So that may have been part of the reason why they stripped him of the title back in, the Halloween Havoc end, because they realized, like, they don't have a spot for him in this. So he'll be back, to his full schedule come January. But as far as the two R's in Starrcade, there was a show back on TBS in the early 80s called Starrcade with one R. And it was sort of like they played arcade games against each other. It was like a game show. Kind of think of the show on Nickelodeon back in the day. I can't think of the name of it right now. But Dusty liked the name of it so much that he thought they'd use it here. But obviously for copyright purposes, they couldn't use it. So they added a second R.
Oh, fair enough. I can't believe I can't remember the name of the Nickelodeon video game show either. I almost said
it's the one with Mikey. It's like Mikey's gonna go left. Dun, 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 dun. Nick Arcade. The most generic name ever. We couldn't think of it.
And also the show I think you and I would have murdered to be on.
Oh, absolutely. But there'll be plenty more nostalgia for you guys as we get through the rest of this 95 show. Trust me on that one. But let's get back to some more bad booking, Kyle. We've got Disco Inferno versus Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. And Disco coming out on a roll, according to the commentary team. But as far as I'm concerned, Kyle, the dude loses every time we see him on TV. So his role must be on Saturday night where he's winning matches.
All I know is that this match is the battle of whose theme is the best. Because right now, WCW is batting 1,000 with these two guys.
Yeah, I mean, so it was kind of weird, Kyle, when I first saw it come up here. I'm like, they got two heels against each other, and they really didn't do that much at this period of time. And these are two heels. I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't know who's going to job to who in this one. But you're right. The theme musics for both are fantastic, or wonderful, I should say. And at one point, the match actually starts, and kind of that's where the fun ends, because this match was not very good, Kyle. Disco Inferno, of course, starts out with the early attack, which gets Nick Patrick to ring the bell prematurely.
He just came back from his school, and he still sucks.
Yeah. the highlights of this match is the commentary booth talking about how Sting and Hogan can't trust each other because they have different locker rooms and different travel arrangements. And then Mr. Wonderful at one point does his version of like the People's Elbow or the Five Knuckle Shuffle, but he sort of mocks Disco Inferno's dancing with it. And then ultimately he pretty much murders Disco on live air with a
he did.
terrible looking suplex of sorts.
Well, by terrible, it looked just hard. I mean, like it looked. If you look at it from a perspective of like a hard spot, like a big bump, it was a big bump. I don't think it was supposed to be, but yeah,
it was a big bump that he landed on his head. I think he put him a little too hard. Of course, he does get the 3 count there, Kyle. Easily, the entrances were the best part of the match. It was over very quick. I think the entrances might have been longer than the match itself. I gave this a star and a half. I gave it a star and a half.
I gave it a star and 3/4, and I only gave the extra one because I'm pretty sure this was Mr. Wonderful's last match, either in WCW or just period. He was suffering with atrophy, I think, on the left side of his body. So, like, he was just losing muscle mass, and this was which kind of sucks. A guy like Mr. Wonderful, who's, I know that we're showing our age, and even us, I think we were a little too young for Mr. Wonderful. I believe he was part of the first WrestleMania. He
was part of the Mr. T. Hogan ordeal there, yeah.
Bob Orton, yeah. So, and Roddy Piper. I think Bob Orton was just on the outside, but yeah. So it's kind of a shame that his final match was him squashing Disco Inferno, but still, I gave the extra quarter because he's a legend, and it was good that WCW at least gave him some sort of send off with a win. So 1 3/4.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more a little bit here in a second. Actually, we could talk about it right now. What the hell? Paul Orndorff, like you said, Kyle, that was his last match. He was kind of forced into retirement. He does come back for 2 other matches in his career. One is in WCW back in like 2000 or something. So like 5 years later, he comes into a match and he gets like a pile driver, and they have to stop the match because he got hurt. I don't remember the exact move. I actually watched this one randomly, like within the last year or so. It's really ugly. He takes a nasty spill and he's like motionless, and it was really bad. And then he comes back like last year, a couple years ago. This I found out on Wikipedia when I was just researching. And he wrestled in like a 6-man tag or something like that in some like indie show or something like that. And I think he actually got the pinfall for that one. So
yeah, I think they actually have it recorded. He's the oldest man to record a pinfall. He's like 63 or something like that. He's an old guy.
He's an older guy. So that's just to add there is that this is basically Paul Orndorff, the end of Paul Orndorff's run in his career. Then he obviously goes on to be an agent and trainer and stuff like that. But anyways, Kyle, after the match we get Mean Gene. He calls out the 4 Horsemen. So of course the 3 Horsemen come out. I'm kind of convinced that ever since them telling us Benoit's part of the Horsemen, like he's just not going to be on TV anymore. I don't know what's happening there. But Pillman kind of grabs the mic and cuts a promo first and basically talks. It's actually a pretty good promo, Kyle. Going off about how Hogan wishes he could be a bad guy, but he couldn't shed. He had to shed the dark side. They know what it's like to be a bad guy, how to be a bad guy. And then he starts ripping on everybody. He's talking about the Dungeon of Doom. Then he starts talking about Paul Orndorff. And I thought this was really strange at the time because I didn't realize this was Orndorff's final match. I'm like, the guy just won a match and he's ripping on him. And I thought Orndorff was kind of a heel still, so I was kind of confused. But then Mean Gene asks for Flair to get him back on track. So Flair starts to do that, but Mr. Wonderful comes out and trashes on Pillman then, says that, Pillman's only a horseman because Paul Orndorff decided not to be. He calls, Pillman kind of the horseman's lackey, bag carrier, that sort of thing. Needless to say, the horsemen all end up attacking Paul Orndorff and finish him off, Kyle, with like a spike pile driver on the near the entranceway. And he's done. This is sort of Paul Orndorff's send-off then, Kyle, as it gets a little heat on the Horsemen. And then Paul Orndorff can kind of be written out of everything with this injury. And Mongo kind of refers to this as, he says Paul Orndorff's a lot like Big Daddy Wilkerson. So, when Mongo brings up the sports analogies.
Yeah, I was hoping you would do the research for me. Thank you.
Yeah, so Wilkerson, of course, was a Bengals defensive tackle in '95, and he suffered a neck injury against the Chicago Bears the day before this show. And he was inactive for the final 2 games of the season. But worry not, Kyle, Big Daddy Wilkerson did come back to play football for some many years afterwards. But that's
good, I can sleep sound then.
There you go. And you can also sleep sound knowing our WCW Saturday Night promo, which followed this.
My favorite part of the show.
Yep, and speaking of your favorites, Sergeant Craig Pitbull Pittman was going to be in a match against Sting, so that should highlight the show right there. And
I feel like sometimes when they give they tell you what's going on, I think the reason why they don't tell you who they fight is because you know what's going to happen.
Right.
Like, Sting's fighting Pittman? Okay, I don't have to worry about that match.
Yeah, I don't have to watch that. But then you got that maggot, Brian Pillman, versus Johnny B. Bad with the doll. So this time they don't call her Kimberly. She's still dressed like a Southern belle, but they call her the doll this time, so I don't know what's going on there, Kyle.
I feel like at this point, Brian Pillman needs to hire Jimmy Hart just so they can have the most heat in the history of ever by the Booth and by Mean Gene.
By Mean Gene, yeah, Mean Gene and Eric Bischoff. And then I love Eric goes, speaking of Bischoff, he goes, and of course, Bunkhouse Buck versus Alex Wright. Like, as though we were supposed to be like, that was the most obvious booking decision ever. And then they mentioned Eddie Guerrero's going to be doing something there. So that's your Saturday night promo.
He might be serving hot dogs for all we know, but he'll be there.
He will be there. We come back. Orndorff, of course, getting put on a stretcher. And then Mongo says something. I swear he says, William Fuller, my teammate for the 49ers, had a similar injury and never played again. So, of course, I did some more research. There was a Jeff Fuller that had a career-ending injury. He played for the 49ers. He never played football at college, professional, or high school with Mongo McMichael. So, not sure if he's
not even Pop Warner or nothing.
No, yeah. Well, I didn't go further. I didn't go far enough back. That's the furthest I went back was high school. Now they were both from Texas, so maybe they had a run in there. But if he was talking about, if he meant just like, hey, we both played professional football, so that's a way of calling you teammates, then I guess. But they never played football together. That's all I'm saying there. So I like how Mongo's basically picking the worst injuries in the NFL and referring to that's what Paul Orndorff just went through, which doesn't bode well for Mr. Wonderful, Kyle.
No, it doesn't. So far, it looks like Orndorff's got about as bad of a prognosis as Shawn Michaels at this point.
That's true. But then, Kyle, we get our next matchup. Of course, the Lex Luger coming out with Jimmy Hart versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And your boy Lex, Kyle, why don't you talk about his entrance here?
Well, I mean, first of all, he has the ability to cause pyro by just flexing, which is always impressive. So I at least got to give him the hats off for that. And then he still has not improved his high five game. And on both Jimmy Hart and I think just in his head, he keeps thinking he's supposed to go to the crowd and give him high fives. And I don't know if you noticed it too. Like he leans over to go to the crowd, to the railing to go high five a couple of people, and he just immediately shifts back to the middle like a fucking robot, and then kind of goes back into it. It's still so awful.
Yeah, he just doesn't know what his job is here. Of course, Duggan comes out, and then the bell, Kyle, I gotta admit, they rang the bell at an appropriate time. Both men were ready for the match, and so
because Luger doesn't need to attack early on as a heel. He just actions speak louder than words. All right.
Right. Well, maybe he should have because Jim Duggan dominated this match.
Yeah, he sure did.
Of course, getting his a lot of attacks and his O's and the thumbs and the whole ordeal. And there's not a whole lot to say about this match, Kyle. They kept cutting back to Orndorff, who was getting stretchered, then getting put onto it, into an ambulance. The whole ordeal there. Though there was some great liners between Mongo and Heenan, which I know you and I both noticed. Mongo talking about his friend Rusty Hutz in Alabama would say, "When you mess with the bull, you get the horns, baby." And Heenan cracked me up with his reply, "Well, those people from Alabama really come up with some classy cliche statements." And I don't know what it was. I loved it
every
too.
bit of it.
Yeah. Ultimately, though, Kyle, the only way Lex Luger is going to beat, mind you, Lex Luger, who's in the triangle match for the number one contendership for the world title, the only way he's going to be able to beat Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who was in a taped fist match at last month's pay-per-view
against Big Bubba, and I think he lost.
Yes, you're right, he did. The only way Lex is going to be able to win this match, of course, is with Jimmy Hart's distraction. So Jimmy Hart grabs the 2x4, holds it on he's on the apron of the ring. Ref's distracted. Duggan goes for the 2x4. Lex pushes Duggan into the 2x4 and then up into the torture rack, all while the ref is watching all of this. Of course, he sees Duggan then tap out in the torture rack, and you've got your winner, Lex Luger. Kyle, this is 1 star for me. I thought the booking decision was shit. Like, Luger should have dominated this match. And then for the referee, from just a standard booking decision to, like, watch all that take place and not disqualify Luger, it's just egregious on his part. I could not be more disappointed with this match.
Yeah, I gave it a 1.25 stars. I think at least the match had some entertainment value to it. And once again, I say that cringingly on the other side of this mic. But I agree. Too much of Luger looking like a straight up chump. He literally was a second away from winning the world title if it wasn't for Hogan interfering in a match last week, and now he's getting his shit handed to him by Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who's completely irrelevant. It's almost if he needed the distraction in order to win. Did not like it whatsoever. But I only give it a slightly higher than a star, only because there was some entertainment to be had. If you and I are picking it apart as a much more micro level, which is why I understand why you gave it a star.
Yeah, I was just disappointed in all around with this match. But after the match, Kyle, we get Mean Gene again. He's here with the Macho Man.
Well, also we find out too that Lex is also going to be wrestling in the Triangle.
Yes, I'm glad you said it.
I'm sorry. He'll be wrestling before it.
Yeah, Lex will be wrestling before. So then you hear that, Lex is now one of the people in this New Japan thing. So Lex is confirmed for 2 matches at this card, right? Well, if Lex wins that Triangle match, now Lex is fighting in 3 matches. And I don't know about you, Kyle. 1 match is enough for me when it comes to Lex Luger, let alone having to see him in 2 other matches on a pay-per-view card. So I thought that was a little strange, but then we get to Macho Man, Kyle. Macho Man, he's in this New Japan thing, so now he's in 2 matches. He'll be defending his title.
So this promo is actually getting much more accurate now.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, that Mysteries of the Orient promo is just, it's really, they're showcasing the everybody, apparently.
It's getting less mysterious.
But that said, Macho Man might not be in that second match, Kyle, because he's defending his world title next week against the Giant on Nitro. Now, normally this is a match I'd be interested in, but the fact that Macho, we're getting so close to Starrcade, I can't imagine them, having him job to the Giant if he's got 2 matches, listed at Starrcade. So I gotta imagine there's a disqualification interference in next week's main event. But hey, that's one way to.
Which is going to make sense. It's kind of one of those things where it has to be because Giant is being billed as once again the mega villain on the show. So it's really weird to put him in a world title match right before a card.
Right. And also from just a standpoint, if you take kayfabe for a minute and you are Sting, Lex Luger, or Ric Flair, wouldn't you be like, what the fuck, man? We have to fight each other in a couple of weeks in a triangle match to decide who's going to have the rights, who says that I am the number 1 person of all the talent to get this shot against Macho Man. Oh, and then meanwhile, the Giant's just over there hey, guys, I got a match next week on Nitro for that title.
Yeah, and I don't have to fight 3 times.
I don't have to do shit. Yeah, so that's about what you get out of that promo, Kyle. And we followed up with a Slim Jim commercial, and then we go to our main event, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Hogan and Sting. This time, though, Kyle, Flair and Anderson come out. We go to commercial. We come back from commercial with that Starrcade promo. So obviously the commercial to Starrcade promo, we hate that when they do that. But right here it's okay because it's not in the middle of a match. So I'm okay with how they did that. And then, of course, Sting comes out afterwards. But where is Hogan? My first thought is, well, Sting's music's playing. I assumed they'd be coming out separately, but the commentary booth was making a big deal that Hogan wasn't there. Of course, Hogan does kind of follow Sting behind. They still think there's a problem, and that's going to be kind of a ongoing theme, not through the show, but also through this match.
Have you also noticed that in almost every match where it's the 2 heels who definitely are buddies, and it's usually the 4 Horsemen or Dungeon of Doom or something like that, both the faces never come out together. There's always that question of,
right.
This is like a running gag
now. It's are they friends or not? Of course, we find out here, Kyle, Sting is getting his rematch at New Japan against New Japan, the guy who I can't think of the guy's name now.
Kensuke Sasaki.
Yeah, Sasaki. They're wrestling each other. It won't be for the U.S. title though, Kyle, because Sting's got his mind and eyes set on that world title match. So now Sting is in 2 matches with a potential for 3.
Well, they also said too that Kensuke or New Japan Pro refuses to defend the U.S. title on U.S. soil because that makes sense.
Right, exactly. Great point. So all that said, Kyle, we get into the match itself. What did you think about this tag match?
Well, I mean, I think you and I both kind of talked about this match last week and thought, this has the makings of being an instant classic. But then when we found out it was going to be in Charlotte, I think that as much as maybe you thought, maybe on the outside looking in, you're like, oh, no, it's going to be in Charlotte. That's Horseman country. This actually might even be more exciting. But in the end, it's not, because Hogan's still the mega face. You can't put Hogan in a match as him trying to still be the mega face of the company and team him up with the other mega face, which is Sting, and expect that both of them are probably going to get booed out of the damn arena, because this is, or at the very least, Hogan will. Sting will get nothing. But
I think Sting, and the crowd was pretty well behind Sting, but they were totally against Hogan.
So, also just a little bit of, like, behind the curtain too. They were actually taking away Horsemen and Ric Flair signs, like the security were, and they were handing Hogan merchandise at the front, like at the guardrail. So if you notice, if you walk down, everyone's just kind of like holding.
They have a lot of those styrofoam Hogans. I did notice that.
Yeah, but they weren't like holding them up. They were kind of just like had them tucked under their arm, and like they had to hold them, but they didn't have to like showcase them. But a lot of them lost their Ric Flair Horseman country, kind of signs, which I thought was a little bit bullshit, and probably caused a little bit even more heat to Hogan. If people are getting their shit taken away and being forced to hold Hogan signs and stuff like that. So the Hogan sucks chants are just in full force right now. Sting's in the match for about 30 seconds, and half of his face paint's already gone thanks to Arn Anderson and his gigantic 48,000-inch pythons that he has. And the one thing I noticed, too, that the booth is trying every angle they could possibly throw to fuel the fire that is the friction between Sting and Hulk, when really there is no friction between Sting and Hulk. There really is. Like, that's such a non-story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it is.
But they're trying so hard to make everything about that. Sting does tag in Hulk, and crowd just wants to, like, I swear to God, if it was different time, someone would have shot that man. Arn tags in Flair, and everybody loses their minds because it's Flair. So I mean, you could tell who the crowd's behind. Sting gets Arn in the deathlock pretty quickly. Flair gets in to break it up, but then he gets put in the deathlock. Hogan tries in to try and stop the double team, but I called him Randy McMuscles Anderson, and his towering physique was able to hold back Hulkamania in the corner. Usually, you'd be able to shove a ref out of the way, especially if you're Hulk Hogan.
No, he's the ring general.
He most certainly. So you gotta give McMuscles at least that credit for now. Arn hits Sting with a DDT while he's not looking. You're gonna see a lot of this in this match where Hogan's trying to help, but all he's doing is basically shooting himself in the foot. Classic in-ring psychology for tag matches.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're now creating that face in peril where Sting is just getting his shit kicked in. Then all of a sudden, Luger and Jimmy Hart come down to the ring, and Luger puts Hogan in the rack as the ref, I'm pretty sure, sees that plain as day, that Luger is just ridiculously destroying Hogan, and I'm pretty sure that's normally a DQ.
That whole part with the Luger interference is very bizarre to me.
It kind of drove me nuts, because the whole, Randy McMuscles, not really saying fuck you, Hogan. Randy Anderson's officially not part of Hulkamania. I'll say that right now. I mean, obviously Jimmy Hart might have distracted the ref, but I don't think so. I don't think really Jimmy Hart was doing anything. but and then what was weirdest for me, Kyle, at this part is like, okay, this is when the match is over, right? No, this happens and then the match goes on for 10 minutes after this. Yeah, we're talking. This is like the halfway point of the match, and so Hogan is kind of like flopping around on the outside, trying to get back to his corner. Sting tries getting to the corner, finds there's nobody to tag in, so Sting continues to get his shit kicked in. They keep working on the knee, obviously setting up for the figure four, which then he gets locked in on. Sting doing his normal Sting shit, does his Hulk up. while he's in it, drags Flair over to try and tag Hogan. And this actually gets Arn Anderson in to try and stop that. That causes McMuscles to go in and use his muscles to stop Arn Anderson. When he's doing that, Sting tags in Hogan. Hogan comes in. Anderson doesn't see the tag. So now Anderson's telling Hogan to go back into the ring, going back to the other side because he didn't see the tag. But then Arn's now in the ring beating up on Sting, who never tagged in. And now he's the legal man.
And he lets that happen. Yeah, that's so bullshit.
It came to the point where I'm like, did Randy get bought out? But is he the fifth horseman? Maybe he's the fourth horseman.
He might be the fourth horseman now, yeah, because Benoit's gone.
Yeah. So once again, Sting's got one more Hulk up in him because obviously he eats Flair chops like it's a protein bar. He tosses Flair off the top turnbuckle because that's Flair bingo as far as wrestling is concerned. But then Sting is weakened by Flair just tripping him up, and his Hulk up just goes away. Arn's back in. Sting drives Arn's head into the mat. Finally gets the tag into Hogan. Everyone loses their mind. Oh, just kidding. They didn't give a shit. He no-sells the double A spine buster. Gets a big boot to Arn and Flair. Leg drop for the pin. This was as chaotic of a match as I have seen so far. But I was glad Sting was in it most of the time because he's a much more capable in the ring than Hogan. Hogan's there for his 3-minute spot that he does, which is really all he was there for. From a ring psychology tag match, this is up there really as one of the better matches I've seen. I think all of them played it very, very well. Obviously, they're all not going to be high flyers. They're not going to wow you with their ability. They're going to wow you with how their chemistry in the match. You could see the chemistry for sure in this match. The constant tags by Flair and Arn, Hogan constantly shooting himself in the foot trying to help. But in the end, I can't give this too much of a rating because I think part of my ratings have to do with how much the crowd enjoyed the match. The crowd hated the ending of this match. You actually saw people ripping up those styrofoam, Hogan memorabilia, whatever they were giving them. They were throwing it in the ring. Like they were not having any of it. You could tell once again they planted a lot of that merchandise. So I'm going to give it a 2.5-star match. It deserves more, but in the end, I can't give it much more because the crowd hated it.
Yeah, I had 2.5 stars as well for this. I agree with you. The psychology of a tag match, I thought it was really well done. Keeping Hogan out of it for most of the part really helped because you got 3 other great wrestlers in Arn, Flair, and Sting to handle that, and then Hogan to come in for the Hogan spots. I think the most thing is it was a little bit too chaotic for me, just the whole Lex interference, because I thought it was weird that he came in, interfered, and then left, kind of, and the match just kept going. I thought it was just bizarre.
Well, it's also one of those matches where, like, we try as hard as we can to try to keep, we have a certain time frame that we try to talk about these matches. It was very hard not to talk a lot about this match because a lot happened.
Right.
I was putting in my notes, and I'm like, shit, I wrote a lot, so I tried to actually write less, and I'm like, actually, all of these things I'm writing about are kind of important
to the match, right? Yeah. Of course, after the match, Kyle, the Horsemen end up coming in to attack Sting and Hogan.
And by the Horsemen, you mean just Pillman.
Right, that's fair.
Unless you count Randy Anderson.
Luger comes in and protects Sting, but basically lets Hogan get his ass kicked. But Macho Man is coming in then as they kind of clear house. And Macho Man gets hit by Sting after they clear house, of course, by accident. So
even though he stared at him for it seemed like for 10 seconds.
Forever, yeah. So Mean Gene's got to come in here, Kyle, and sort this shit out between Hogan, Sting, and Macho Man, see what happens. Basically, Macho Man hates Lex Luger. Hogan says he's still on suspension or probation. Ultimately, Macho Man says, let's all take a chill pill, brothers. And they take chill pills, and they kiss and make up, which seems like it's been the same frickin' promo I've seen 14 other times between these three saying, yep, I'm still good, I like you, you like me, we all like each other.
It's all the same. It's all the same spoon-fed shit we've been getting every week with the baby faces.
Pretty much. Then we go back to the commentary booth. Basically, they're talking about Macho Man's got some big giant problems next week because he's wrestling a giant. Hogan is not suspended. He's just on probation. His contract's not letting him, like I said, wrestle at Starrcade. So Bischoff just trying to let you guys know what the situation is there. And Mongo basically says the Horsemen have their act together. They are a team, but are Hogan, Sting, and Macho Man, are they together or not? So we're still pushing that storyline even as we end Nitro. Kyle, what did you think of this show?
There was a lot to digest, but in the end, I was okay with it because of the fact that I think from an entertainment standpoint, there was enough to sink your teeth into. Obviously, there were some head-scratching decisions in the booking, like you said before. Duggan and Luger. If you were to remove the Duggan Luger match and just shorten this to its normal 45 minutes, this is also this is a 55-minute Nitro.
Yes, it was, right.
So if we were to go back to the 45-minute, I think this actually would have been a rather good Nitro, but I think that this kind of brought it down a bit. Hogan's involvement in something he won't be involved with going forward is weird because he's not going to be a part of Starrcade, but yet they're still putting him on TV. They're focusing a lot on Hogan, even though he really has nothing going on. But then in the end too, I did enjoy the send-off match with Mr. Wonderful, a decent Guerrero match. And so, overall, I thought Nitro really wasn't that bad.
I think you might be a little higher on it than I was. I thought it was okay. Obviously some strange booking decisions, especially that Lex Luger Duggan match. I thought it was a little strange with Disco and Wonderful being the two heels against each other, but I can kind of understand with the Wonderful send off what they were doing there. But ultimately, to me, Kyle, solid main event. But the Starrcade card is going to be just really weird that they've got like 5 people and they're booking them in almost every match. So very curious to see how that all turns out. But
and here's the thing too. So far we know that Sting's in 2 matches. We know he's part of the World Cup in the Triangle. Lex is part of the World Cup in the Triangle. Macho Man is part of the World Cup and ultimately defending. Where's Ric Flair? He has no match other than the Triangle match. You want a hypothesis right here? Ultimately, Kyle, I think Ric Flair's only in the Triangle match, and I think he wins it and goes on to that world title match because then that would put him in 2 matches compared to everybody else getting 2 matches. I don't think anyone wrestles in 3. And once again, I think you make a good point. But then again, I think that's a good storyline to say that somebody went through the gauntlet and won 3 matches in order to win the title.
Yeah,
but once again, that's a face thing to do. So the only person I think that would give that kind of thing is Sting.
And I don't think Sting's being poised for the world title run right now.
No, he's not.
It seems like, if I had to rank it, it's Giant, Hogan, Lex, somewhere, those are the 3 with Macho Man that seem.
And then if you want to reset the whole damn thing, if everything just seems, because once again, when you're booking yourself into a hole or into a wall, which I think they are, one of the things you want to do then is just reset the whole damn thing, and that's Flair.
Right.
So if you Flair the belt, you just start from scratch, which actually is not a bad thing to do. You start
especially if you're starting to push that Hogan-Flair feud, and when Hogan can return to pay-per-views, you've got Hogan versus Flair poised for 96 pay-per-view.
Yep, correct.
So we'll see. We spent a lot of time discussing Nitro this week, damn near 43 minutes or so, Kyle, which usually we try to leave about a half hour for that first half. But I don't think it's going to be a big deal because as we get into Raw,
you can tell we're getting really disappointed in Raw right now.
We are getting really disappointed in Raw. Obviously, the show opens up. We got a promo for tonight's main event, Bob Backlund versus Bret Hart. And then they're reminding us that Shawn's going to speak out for the first time since he collapsed, Kyle. So a couple good things to look forward to, I suppose. And as they set the somber tone of Shawn speaking out, what kind of condition is he in? We open up with Dancing Shawn Michaels in our normal opening for Raw.
They need to change that until he comes back.
Yes, it's very weird. But after they go through the opening, Kyle, we get Owen Hart coming down with the whole crew. You got Yokozuna, Jim Cornette. At first I thought it was a tag match, but no, it's not. It's a solo. It's a singles match. Of course, Owen Hart warming up for his match against Diesel at In Your House this Sunday, Kyle. He's got the whole clan out there, and who's he wrestling? Jeff Hardy. That's not somebody I expected to see at that moment. Jeff Hardy is 18 years old here, Kyle. I think he was lying about his age to WWF to get into some of these dark matches and squash matches and stuff. So obviously Jeff Hardy, the enhancement talent in this, but
and the funny thing is Sean Waltman still looks younger than Jeff Hardy at this point.
They show Diesel in the back, Kyle, watching this match on a monitor. So of course he's studying his opponent Owen Hart as he had answered the call of Owen's open challenge. And And also Diana Hart is here, Kyle. Of course,
AKA Miss Resting Bitch Face.
yeah, really was. This is Bulldog's wife, Bret and Owen's sister. Apparently, she's got a lot of emotions. It's reminding her of Wembley Stadium, 1992 SummerSlam, Kyle, when Bulldog.
People.
Right. So, if you play a drinking game for that when you watch this show, guys, if you haven't watched it yet, prepare to be drunk because it's going to get brought up a lot. Not much to say about this match, Kyle. Eventually, Owen is going to win it with a missile drop kick for a 3. He kind of faked out the sharpshooter at one point, but a couple clotheslines and stuff here. I give this a 1.5 stars. As far as squash matches go, I thought it looked pretty good. I thought Jeff sold really well, and maybe there's some bias in here that I know what kind of star he becomes, but I thought he looked great here for an enhancement talent jobber.
Yep, and that's why I gave this 2 stars. I know that's hard to give a 2-star rating to a squash match, but I think this was about as good and smooth a squash match as can be. You had Jeff, who was giving a little bit of offense, but ultimately was there to make Owen look good. And in the end, Owen did look good at the end of this match. I gave it 2 stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. And then after the match, Kyle, there was even a little bit more. Yokozuna gets in here, does a bonsai drop to Hardy, and then Owen follows it up with the sharpshooter. So they're trying to get some more heel heat on here. That's enough. Diesel's seen enough. He comes out for the save. And I think I heard the term Big Daddy Cool about 150 times during this moment. It really hammers home what I hear these days. Like, Vince finds a nickname for somebody, like the Big Dog for Roman Reigns, and he has Michael Cole say it a million times. Big Daddy Cool is no longer a cool phrase to me. Like, I just get irritated when I hear it.
It's all about what sells T-shirts and things like that. You gotta have a name.
I understand, but it still drives me nuts.
I think it's weird about this is that I thought Diesel was kind of slowly being billed as like this, being real and kind of being a little bit more of a heel. Like, I'm not going to be your puppet here at WWF. Like, he was, it just seemed weird.
Right.
That he's also kind of in this weird purgatory of, are you a heel? Are you a face?
Yeah, he's kind of a tweener, but right now they need to have a heel versus face matches on their pay-per-view cards. And that's what Owen's the heel here. Diesel's going to be your face in this match, and that's what they wanted to make sure you know.
I also like that Nash did walk out and high-fived everybody that had his merchandise on.
That's what he does. After this, Kyle, we get Chaparita versus Aja Kong. And they announced that Vince McMahon's going on America Online tonight after Raw, Kyle, so something to think about dialing up and getting into. Nice conversation with Vince. And this match, Kyle, is a weird squash match. Aja Kong just dominating over this very tiny Chaparita. And she multiple times, at least 3 times, if not more, she goes for that patented 3 count, but pulls up, after 1. After you're like, oh, the match is over. Nope, I'm going to keep dishing it out. She's very stiff in this match. A lot of, just really hard and just trying to show that she's this monster beast. And ultimately will win this match after Chaparita misses a top rope move and Aja Kong hits this, spinning fist. I gave it a 1.5 stars. I thought originally this was a decent match, Kyle. I would probably put it 2 stars or something. But after, the 3 count pull-ups just kept going on and on, this match just felt like it was dragging on. It felt to me like when you play a video game and you've already beaten your opponent, but then you're just toying around and trying different move sets and stuff like that and just keep trying to do the finisher and let me try that again. And there's really nothing left to your opponent. That's how this match felt to me. And I
feel like you've experienced this before. You have played people in these video games, you're getting your ass kicked so much and the guy's just trying out stuff on you.
Right.
I gotcha. I actually gave this a much higher rating. And the reason why is because I think this was supposed to be meant to enhance Aja Kong for a women's title match. So she was supposed to come out looking like a dangerous person. And this was, like you said, this was such a stiff match. Probably one of the stiffest I've seen since we've been going in here. Because even Chap, I think pretty much Chap got a broken nose of some sort at the end of the match because she was bleeding quite a lot.
She was beat up there, right?
But yeah, I did some research on this and it turns out once again they were trying to push Aja Khan for a title match against Alundra Blaze, but because this was taped back on a fucking month ago, Alundra Blaze was already on her way out of the company by the time this episode ran, which is why Vince and King always do their commentary on the day of the show being coming out.
Right. That makes sense.
They never mentioned Alundra Blaze, which I'm sure they would have if Alundra Blaze was still, going to be part of the company. So that's the reason why I think the commentary was not so much into the match. I think they made a lot of lame fat jokes. And then, something about potatoes, I really wasn't following it. But I gave it a good match because I think it was supposed to be to make Aja Khan look this crazy hard, just destructive force, which obviously I don't think really goes anywhere because Alundra Blaze goes over to WCW.
Fair enough. After that, Kyle, we get our Shawn Michaels speaking out. This is a segment with Todd Pettengill. Todd first opens up, and he is the biggest hype man for Shawn Michaels in this opening. I mean, he's really giving him all the props.
What does Shawn's dick taste like?
He was all about him. Shawn just kind of responds by thanking the fans for their outpourings of support, stuff like that. Kind of almost ignores, the hype that Todd was giving him. Then they ask, they kind of discuss his health, and Shawn says he's okay and he's not suffering symptoms anymore, and he'd return today if he could, but the doctors aren't letting him.
What a waste of that segment last week then, where always was a doctor saying that this is all the things that Shawn's suffering, and then Shawn this week's like, I'm not suffering any of those.
Right, exactly. And then Todd Pettengill goes, it must be so cool to be you, and you have all these titles, but you've never had the world title, which I thought was kind of a low blow from Pettengill.
A little bit of a dig.
And then he follows it up by saying, like, are you ready to retire or not? And then Shawn says, is this what this is all about? And then ultimately says, I'm not going to dignify that question with a response. So kind of like
this
an
interview
awkward
took a hard
end.
Right turn into a wall.
Yeah, it was very strange. And that was sort of the end of it. And so you get the impression, Michaels wants to come back, and he's not planning on retiring, but, we'll see what the doctors say. Just a weird promo in general, but it is what it is. Then we followed up, Kyle, a promo for our main event at In Your House, Bret Hart defending his title against British Bulldog. Bret Hart wanting that revenge from 3 years ago, Kyle. Don't forget.
Wait. What happened 3 years ago?
SummerSlam 1992, Wembley Stadium, 82,000 people. British Bulldog beat Bret Hart. So.
Oh man, I just finished half a bottle of Jack. You just naming all those things off.
After this, Kyle, we get Ahmed Johnson versus, I thought they said Rick Stockhauser. I don't know if you got the name. Okay.
Yes, Rick Stockhauser.
I was watching this one, and I couldn't get closed captioning up there, so I normally put it up to get a name. As Ahmed Johnson comes out, you get a Dean Douglas cutting a little promo on him, and basically says Ahmed Johnson's meteoric rise has come to an end. And then Rick Stockhauser.
Meteoric rise, huh? Okay.
Yeah, meteoric rise, quote, unquote. Rick Stockhauser, though, starts early on Ahmed Johnson, which leads Ahmed Johnson to, fight back and ultimately drop some of the shittiest-looking spine busters I have ever seen. I think he did it twice because the first one was so bad. And then
what my notes said.
And then follows it up with the Pearl River Plunge, which they actually call the Pearl River Plunge. And for that, Kyle, it gets 1 star for me.
I you know what? I agree with this one now. Ahmed Johnson gets 1 star from me as well. I think you literally learn, I think the second thing you learn in wrestling school, besides learning how to take a bump, is how to be thrown to the ropes. And Rick Stockhauser looked like he was going to trip over his own feet when he was thrown to the ropes for that first spine buster. And that one looked so bad.
So bad.
That I think they're like, fuck it, we're doing it again. And then the second one was not much better, but
probably because Ahmed Johnson's like, shit, that looks so bad. I only have 2 moves, a spine buster and a Pearl River Plunge. I don't know what to do here, so let's just do it again.
But I also put down, it's a bad match, and it was a horrible match, really, when it wasn't actually Ahmed's fault for most of the problems.
That's fair. After the match, Kyle, we get a couple commercials, basically, for karate fighters, and then Is
this what we were used to for WWE Network? Do we usually see actual commercials? I understand
I guess it's part of their show. I don't know.
I understand the ones where they're the ones promoting the In Your House or a pay-per-view, but not like these 3 straight.
We got 3 straight commercials.
Don't get me wrong. I love the '90s orgasm I had with these toys.
Well, it was karate fighters, and then I marked out for Hot Shot Basketball. I have not seen that in forever. And then the WWF WrestleMania arcade game, which of course we've seen some commercials for that already, but loved the Hot Shot basketball promo at that point. We come back from commercial, Kyle, and we get King interviewing Ahmed Johnson, and of course King doing his shtick here where he says Dean Douglas said the toughest 4 years Ahmed Johnson ever had was his time in third grade. Obviously saying Dean said this, Dean said that to try to get some heat there. More school puns are basically said, and Ahmed Johnson comes back and says Dean didn't do his homework because I'm not a man of words, I'm a man of action, and tells King to go sit down. So King gets put in his spot by the mighty Ahmed Johnson. And then, Kyle, Barry Dudinsky is MIA as Doc Hendricks starts selling the denim jackets this week, and I gotta say, a little disappointed.
I don't even need to write notes anymore. I think everything that you've written here is literally everything I wrote. Although only thing I did want to say about the Ahmed Johnson thing real quick was that Ahmed Johnson did say the truest quote ever in wrestling history. He says, "I am not a man of words." And I'm like, preach, brother. That's so true.
But he did say he was a man of action, so
he is.
He's
a man of two actions: spinebuster and Pro Overplay.
That would be the truest of all true statements, right there, if he said that.
But yes, Barry Dudinsky, rest in peace.
Then, Kyle, we get a bizarre promo. All of a sudden, it's like a little kid, like he's in a police, two-way mirror sort of moment, and he's looking at a lineup. He's looking at a lineup, and it's a bunch of Santa Clauses, and a couple of them are wrestlers, as you can tell. They're wearing Santa Claus gear, and there's the detective there. Something he's like, "Hey, so which one was it?" And he's like, "Him. He's the one who said cigarettes are good, wrestlers are wimps, and Santa Claus isn't real." And then all the wrestlers, just as Santa Claus people, jumped the one guy who apparently said all that. This was the most hilariously
Happy Holidays from
90s
WWF
thing. Yeah, and then it ends with Happy Holidays.
By the way, that was Harvey Whippleman, I'm pretty sure.
It could have been Harvey Whippleman. You're right about that. I wasn't sure, and I didn't put it down there, but I bet you're right. It was Harvey Whippleman then. And then they followed up with the Raw Bowl promo. Of course, you got a bunch of wrestlers like Yokozuna and stuff. They're wearing the eye paint, their shoulder pads, things like that, and Freddie Blassie's kind of pumping them up for this show that they're doing on New Year's Day, Kyle. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see that or not, or if it's on the network, but that's what they're promoting. And then we come back, Kyle, and we get Vince McMahon. He's doing a little interview segment here with 1-2-3 Kids, our good old boy Cycle Sid, and Ted DiBiase. And he starts to interview Kid, and Ted says, whoa, I am the spokesperson here. I am the spokesman. They talk about basically Razor Ramon whines and cries. And, Kid gets on the mic and says that, you got your future tag team champions right here. And there's a couple of things that I've learned from Ted DiBiase, and it's the following. Number one, that you people don't matter, referring to the fans. So classic heat right there, Kyle. Then he says the only thing I need to worry about is winning. And then ultimately, get the money! So that's this big thing there.
Bless his heart trying to find his heel character. That's all I gotta say.
It took some time. And then basically says Razor thinks he's the puppet master, but not anymore. Then Sid gets on the mic, and he's actually not whispering here, Kyle, which is nice. I could actually hear what he said. And obviously he says, I'm not going to enjoy this. I won't like what I'm going to do here. I won't enjoy this. And Kid seemed very, very concerned about that. And he's like, you're not going to enjoy this? And then Sid laughs and says, of course I'm going to love this, enjoy this. So that's your match there, or your little promo there, Kyle.
Once again, another promo where Ted DiBiase should have just spoken the whole fucking time.
Yes, probably. There's a reason he is the spokesman. After that, we get a promo for next week on Raw, Kyle. Razor Ramon putting up his Intercontinental title again on Raw, this time against Yokozuna.
AKA, it'll be a DQ.
Yeah, absolutely it will. And then, Kyle, we go to our main event. It's Bob Backlund versus Bret Hart. But before the match starts, we got to recap. Of course, Bob Backlund attacked the sound engineer and his crossface, chicken wing, everyone he could. And then they get another commercial for Blast from the Past, Kyle. It's the RC car Ricochet, and this one made me mark out as well. I just remember seeing these commercials back in the day, and I don't know if, Kyle, if you ever had the Ricochet or play with the Ricochet, but it's a pretty fun little car.
Yeah, but the whole point of the Ricochet is that they finally made an RC car that you could crash into walls. That's what we want.
He crashes into walls, gets back up, and keeps going. So it's a fun little thing. Then they do a commercial for the NFL Quarterback Club video game, which I thought actually looked like it had pretty good graphics. And then erector sets. So a lot of toys from the 90s here, Kyle, that kind of, give you a little nostalgia, if you will. And then before the match starts, Kyle, don't forget Wembley Stadium, 1992. That's when Bret Hart lost to British Bulldog.
And there goes the other bottle.
And then this match, Kyle, was, I don't know how you felt about it, slow. My God, this felt so slow.
I was okay with it until I wasn't okay with it. Like, I was okay with the beginning.
At the beginning, okay, yeah, they start out classic mat wrestling sort of match, little takedowns and holds. Yeah, I'm like, okay,
that's all Backlund's background,
so, right? Yeah. Exactly. That's Bob Backlund. I could see Bret Hart kind of working with that. Okay, and then they cut over to King, who of course is going to be interviewing Diana Smith, Bulldog's wife, Bret's sister. And this is, in the history of interviews, this might have been the worst.
It was very uninspiring.
Totally uninspiring. She's so dry to respond. I mean, it was like a robot here. Basically, she says this is Wembley Stadium all over again. In case you forgot, Kyle, Wembley Stadium, SummerSlam 1992, 82,000 people. That's when British Bulldog beat Bret Hart.
I don't think we were expecting Diana to be like, well, let me tell you something, brother.
Well, but it was so bad. Then he asked her, like, what do you think if he wins the title? Well, then I can go back home happy. Like, okay.
She answers every question with like 4 words.
Yeah, it was, and then he's like, "What do you think about British Bulldog is attacking people, and he's got this new attitude." Well, no one listened to him before. Okay, and
what do you think of Jim Cornette?
What do you think of Jim Cornette?
He was the one that got him a title shot,
right? And then it was like, okay, well, let's get back to this match. So then we go back to the match,
and our impression of Diana was more enthusiastic.
Yes, absolutely. So. And then back to the match, Kyle, and it is just arm drags and arm holds, and it is just slow. And my notes, Kyle, here's what I have: that it's slow, and then that they mention Wembley Stadium again at one point. They talk about Bob Backlund runs for president, but Jim Ross is the only thing Jim Ross will run for is lunch, which that got me to pop a little bit.
Yeah.
But then Dean Ambrose might want to get on the phone. They called Bob Backlund the Lunatic Fringe, which I believe
makes total sense. I mean, once again, Vince is in charge of all these names, right. So yeah.
Ultimately, Bret starts to do his moves to finish up the match, and of course Bulldog comes down, kind of distracts him, which leads to Bob Backlund putting on the chicken wing to Bret Hart. There's a disqualification in there somewhere, and ultimately they double team on Bret. This is a star and 3/4. This match was so slow, Kyle. It never picked up. I thought this actually could have been an entertaining match with those two, and it just wasn't. And the only thing worse than this match was the interview with Bulldog's wife.
Yeah, that drove it down a bit. And that's why I gave it a 1.5 stars. I feel like Backlund and Bret, they just sleepwalked the entire match. It was incredibly slow. And worse, there wasn't even like a clear-cut winner. And I actually started to think to myself, when was the last time we had a winner in the main event on Raw? I think we've gone on almost 6 weeks.
Has it been that long? Yeah. I mean, I guess it could have been when Sid beat Razor, but of course, Kid interfered with that and did the quick count. But
yeah, that's right. Was that before or after HBK went down? It was before.
It was before that. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the last time that we
and
saw
that had interference.
Somebody, and it had interference.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. Overall, though, Kyle, what'd you think about this Raw?
Raw was poor. It was pretty poor. The Owen match was a good squash. I think that was the only real, good, crisp, well done choreographed match. And sadly, it was like a 3-minute squash. The Aja Khan match was brutal. But in some ways it was a good brutal, but it just sucks that it's not going to really come to anything because of the whole Alundra Blaze taking her ball and taking her talents to Georgia. But the rest of the card was dog shit.
Yeah, this might be the worst Raw we've seen yet, and I think I said that last week. So, this is the go-home show for In Your House, Kyle. And you know how I feel. I grade go-home shows a little bit tougher because I feel like they need to get me interested to turn on the WWE Network throw on that next pay-per-view and see what happens. And right now, I don't
worse,
care.
back then, pay for the
right.
pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, exactly. Back then, there's no way in hell be paying for this card. They sort of pushed the tag team match with Kid and Sid getting out there talking.
Who are the tag champions?
Are Smoking Guns still tag? I don't know. I haven't seen them in a while, and I guess they're not wrestling at the card. The titles aren't on the line. Obviously,
they haven't been around since the last pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's been a while. The Intercontinental title's not up for grabs at this pay-per-view, so it's the world title match. You've got Diesel and Owen. I'm not interested in this card. I just thought this show in general was bad.
Whoa. Ahmed Johnson is taking on Dean Douglas.
That's true.
Which actually, spoiler alert, he doesn't. Which also makes it even worse that they already know that they're not going to wrestle because of his back injury. But yet, even on the Go Home show, they're still pushing it.
They didn't
even
cut
though
that
it's
out.
taped and they know.
Right.
That's what's so egregious about this.
Yeah. So ultimately, Kyle, just a bad show, and I think you and I are both on the same fence. Nitro's going to win this week, right?
Yeah, as far as from an entertainment standpoint and just drama and interest, Nitro has to win. Nitro is much more interesting to watch as far as watch. If I'm going to spend an hour of my time to watch a show, I got 9 to 10 o'clock.
Joke's on you. You had to spend 2 hours watching it for this podcast.
For this podcast. So, but you had everyone of importance on the show, and you had Eddie Guerrero in a match to start off the show. So at least you're showing off the talent. Booking is still weird. I get it that. But if that's the thing we're going to nitpick from the show mostly, then it could have been a lot worse. So it couldn't have been too awful. Raw, on the other hand, is just plain uninteresting.
Yeah, I mean, Nitro wins, and it's not close for me either. I didn't even think Nitro was a great show. It was an okay show. Like we opened up the podcast, Kyle, this is not the golden age of wrestling by any means. This is some dog shit wrestling, really. There's a reason I didn't watch wrestling back then, and there's a reason I didn't come back until the NWO showed up. This is rough, but we'll have to look to see how they follow up In Your House, Kyle, because that's always going to be interesting with ratings. Which, speaking of ratings, Raw was a 2.5, up from a 2.4 last week. So we'll see whether or not they can keep, or at least maintain, or grow that viewership after In Your House Sunday. I'm going to say they're not going to, but who knows. Nitro, meanwhile, they had a 2.6, which was the same as a 2.6 last week. So all in all, these ratings are kind of fluctuating, between a low 2 to a mid to high 2, since we started. But it's going to be a while before those numbers change.
All I know is that 1996 can't come any quicker.
It cannot, indeed. I agree with you there, Kyle. And but unfortunately, we're not done with 1995 just yet. Next week we will be discussing the December 18th editions of Nitro and Raw, the follow-up to In Your House 5, and maybe the go-home show for the Starrcade. That said,
I think there's one more after.
There may be one more. Yeah. I bet you're right. There's actually one like 2 days before the pay-per-view, so we might have two before that. So
I think it's Christmas Eve as well.
So there you have it. If you guys haven't subscribed to us yet on iTunes and Google Play, go do that. Leave us a rating, leave us feedback, let us know all that, and go give us a follow on Twitter, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Instagram, Kyle. Our picture of Sir Mo dressed as a druid on Instagram blew up. One of our most liked, favorited, commented pictures to date. So, and if you need to find us, go to MondayNightTours.com for all of our social media, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And for Kyle Hoagland, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you guys next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a good Tuesday. See you later.